When I arrived on the island in 2004, I remember there were 5 swimming pools. And then in 2010, I did a survey all around the island to find out if people had proper sewage system, if people had generator, if if they had a pool and what kind of swimming pool it was. Just all the different impacts that tourism could have through the hotels and restaurants. And then I found 700.
5 to 700 in what, 6 years?
Yeah, because everyone wants their little, plunge pool.
Despite having a spectacular ocean right there.
Yeah, instead of just going into the ocean, which, like most of the years, no problem to go into the ocean.
Welcome back to another episode of the Protect the World podcast. Every month, I connect with a different not-for-profit organisation that's making the world a better place. My goal is to learn about the issues they're tackling, interview the founder or director, and then share their stories with you. But I don't just want to share their stories. I want to contribute to their work as well. If you'd like to help me, you can sign up to the Patreon via the link in the show notes. The voice you heard at the beginning of this podcast belongs to Delphine Robbe, Managing Director of the Gili Eco Trust. Originally from France, Delphine has dedicated the last 20 years of her life to building a sustainable future for the picturesque Indonesian island of Gili Trawangan. Located off the coast of Lombok, east of Bali, Gili Trawangan is one of 3 islands that make up the Gili Islands. The region is renowned for its beautiful white sand beaches and spectacular coral reefs, which are home to an extraordinary diversity of marine life. However, the resulting influx of tourists combined with the ongoing impacts of climate change have already had a significant impact on Gili Trawangan. The centre of the island has turned into an ever-expanding garbage dump, and the corals are experiencing bleaching and reduced rates of growth as a result of warming temperatures and ocean acidification. In response, the team at the Gili Eco Trust coordinate an extensive reef restoration program, utilising innovative Biorock technology, and they've also implemented a waste management scheme across the island. Additionally, they run a range of environmental education initiatives and animal welfare programs on Gili Trawangan. In a few moments, you'll hear Delphine describe herself as a passionate eco-warrior, and throughout the conversation, you'll discover exactly why that's true. The world needs as many people like Delphine as possible, and I hope this discussion inspires you to connect with the nature around you, wherever you find yourself on the planet. Before we get started, I will mention that the roosters of Gili Trawangan and the frogs of the Amazon were desperately keen to interrupt both Delphine and myself, so please just embrace the animal sounds in the background of this conversation. So now, I bring you Delphine Robbe, Managing Director of the Gili Eco Trust. Delphine Robbe, a very warm welcome to the Protect the World podcast. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good. Thanks for being here. I'd like to start by asking, who are you and how do you describe yourself?
I'm Delphine, and I'm originally from France, and I've been living on Gili Trawangan for 20 years now. And I will describe myself as a passionate eco-warrior.
Love that. That's a great title. We'll be talking a lot about the work of your organisation, Gili Eco Trust, but before we get into that, I'm wondering if you could situate us in the Gili Islands, and particularly Gili Trawangan, where you're based. Could you describe what it's like on the islands?
Okay, so Gili Trawangan is next to Lombok, not far from Bali, and it's a very small island. It's only 7 kilometers around, and it was only coconut trees and a few local people for a long time, and then in the 70s it started to get developed with tourism, but slow. It was only the hippies, and then first dive shop was in the 80s, I think. So we are small green island with a tiny hill and two other islands next to it, Gili and Gili, and then a very nice waters around the ocean. So the Indonesian Sea, and on the south we have the Indian Ocean. Now it's well developed and many tourists come to visit because many divers are coming here. We can see turtles very easily, so divers and snorkelers, but then also many people coming just for party and some people coming to get still possible a quiet place somewhere for themselves or their families as well. We have quite lots of families. So as for tourism, all the front is developed, so the beach, all the hotels with beach views and ocean views. And then in the middle, it's getting more and more like villas and hotels, a few restaurants. But then there's a second hill of rubbish that has grown because of tourism and development. So that's about it for the island. Beautiful. I think you can hear the birds, so morning or all day you can hear the birds like this. Still very natural in some places, but a huge environmental disaster in the middle with a rubbish dump.
Right. Yeah, I'm keen to talk with you a little bit more about that side of the issues on the island. How big is the island itself? How long would it take to walk or drive from one side to the other?
So 7 kilometers around. If you want to go all around, it's running. It's easy, and it's 40 minutes, let's say, run. If you want to cross the island from north to south, it's going to take half an hour maybe, and west to east much less, 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. The island is also lovely because we don't have cars or motorbikes. We only have bicycle and horses. So, you don't rent a bike when you come here. Well, no, a motorbike, you rent a bicycle. And then you go around like this. So then it takes even less time to cross the island.
Interesting. Okay. So you've got your reefs around the outside, you've got sort of beachfront hotels and that kind of thing, some villas, and then rubbish in the center. Is that rough picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. And the other two islands, are they similar, or how do they compare?
So Trawangan is the one that is the furthest away from Lombok, and the biggest one, and the one with a hill. Not the hill of rubbish, but we've got it's a 70 meters high hill. And then Gili is the smallest one, just next to us, and with a lake, and very quiet. It's still the honeymoon and family island, but it's getting developed as well, with like a big beach bar that just opened. And then Gili is the closest one to Lombok, and there, I think it's a mix of the two, of Trawangan and Menno, although the locals wouldn't like me to say that, because that's the first one that was populated, because the closest to Lombok, so you could have access to fresh water easily. The Trawangan, there was no fresh water for a long time. So yeah, it's no hill, no lake, and then and they develop a nice little center, because there's a big issue with beach erosion, with people building seawalls. So Gili is losing its beach really, really fast. So the businesses in the front, they don't really have a beach anymore. So they started to develop more and more inland. So yeah.
That's interesting. And I believe you arrived on Gili Trawangan in 2004, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about how the island has changed in the 20 years that you've lived there?
When I arrived in 2004, the island was very quiet, and you really had a low season and high season with tourism. We like to do competition of how many flies will come on your fly paper. You know, the sticky fly paper. In low season, there were more flies than tourists. So, but then, yeah, throughout the reputation and then the development of internet and phones and things like this, the island starting to get more and more tourists. And I remember one year in 2008, in high season, there was not enough rooms for all the tourists coming because they were not booking.com and all those things. So they, so people just had to come or contact you through the website or phone if it worked and things like this to book. So they were just coming, hoping to find a room, but there was not enough, and there was no electricity either, because the company couldn't cope with that everyone full. So you were renting a room for 5 people for a lot of money, but with no electricity. So then the race for development started, and instead of opening a nice little dive shop and everything in wood and along, the palm leaves on the roof and things like this, it started to be like race for hotels, making money with rooms. So first the front and then progressively inland. So you still have like the little homestay and some hostel, but then a lot of people started to do villas and things like this. When I arrived on the island in 2004, I remember there were 5 swimming pools. And then in 2010, I did a survey all around the island to find out if people had proper sewage system, if people had generator, if, and if they had a pool and what kind of swimming pool it was. Just all the different impacts that tourism could have through the hotels and restaurants. And then I found 700.
5 to 700 in what, 6 years?
Yeah, because everyone wants their little, plunge pool.
Despite having a spectacular ocean right there.
Yeah, instead of just going into the ocean, which, like most of the years, no problem to go into the ocean. Let's say 98% of the time, we still have tropical storm or, but it's really rare. Once a year.
Interesting. And tell me a little bit about the history of Gili Eco Trust. How did the organization begin?
So the Gili Eco Trust started actually before me, before I came to the island. They started in 2000, and there were 7 dive shops on the island at that time, and they wanted to help SADGAS, which is a youth association defending the waters of the Free Gilis against destructive fishing method, and in particular dynamite fishing that was happening at that time. I think in 99, Indonesia got into famine. I think not enough rain or something like this. Not enough rice for everyone. So everyone was pushed to go fishing. And even the government was pushing towards dynamite fishing for about 3 months until they say, "Oh, you destroy your future. It's illegal now." So, great. How to control 17,504 islands? Still a question. So SADGAS were employed, or their family were employed in most of the dive shop, and they were working, maybe as dive master or captain or thing. They got a bit worried that the dynamite fishing will destroy their future. So they created Sadgas, which and got a little boat, speedboat, and started defending the waters, just kicking everyone out, And after a few months of patrolling, they ran out of money and so motivation. So they asked the existing dive shop if they could get some help to be able to carry on doing their jobs. And the dive shop say yes, and the dive shop created like a reef tax or reef donation that they nicely ask to all the divers, and they still do. So that's how, so it's not a tax, it's a donation, but it's introduced that the people can't refuse.
Yeah.
So, and it's still happening. So that's how the Gili Eco Trust started, and then so they kept on sponsoring Sadgas basically, and then because there was no more destructive fishing, when I came, I joined the Gili Eco Trust through doing the Biorock reef restoration, and then we started to do more things together with Sadgas, with like placing mooring buoys and then we did the fisherman agreement because there was no more dynamite fishing, but there was still some destructive fishing method called murami. And then more and more reefs getting built. And then the government came to take over. So Sadgas got offended because the government basically said, oh, this is our marine protected area and you've been paying for destructive fishing method. So basically telling them you've done a not very good job and kind of illegal. So and then the government was like, but we're happy to work together, and the boys were not. So Sadgas stopped, but I stayed. So I stayed with the Gili Eco Trust, and I still deal with the government with ups and downs. I mean the ones in the marine protected area department, they're quite nice. We work together a lot and we've got an MOU. The others, that's something else. The rubbish guys. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So there are two separate divisions, waste management on the island and the marine protected area is. Okay. And where is the whole ocean around the island a marine protected area, or certain parts for fishing, or how does it all work?
So it's a marine touristic national park, I think they call it. It was supposed to be a marine protected area, but when the government woke up, they checked and there's like, there's too many rooms already on each island, because there's some limitation if you want marine protected area. So yes, it's almost 3,000 hectares around the 3 islands. That's the marine protected area. And then you have some different type of zone. So the beneficial zone is where you can snorkel, dive, and fish, but only certain type of fishing. And then you've got the rehabilitation zone where we're doing reef restoration. And then you've got the critical zone where you're not allowed to do anything unless you've got a research permit. Like basically we have one to do is one survey a year, which should be more, but it's one survey a year. And then on each island, you've got those zones. And then you've got the protected zone, which is in connectivity with the critical zone to allow coral spawning to have some place to, baby corals to have some place to settle, not far from the critical zone. What else we have? That's about it, I think. And then we've got the harbour zone, which is the only place where they're allowed to drop anchor. So yeah.
Right. Yep. How many tourists do you have coming through on an average day?
On Trawangan only, about 2,000.
2,000 a day?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. So run me through the different programs that your organisation is involved in at the moment. What are your focus areas?
At the moment, the Gili Eco Trust is still focusing a lot on reef restoration, and then we've got a monitoring project called Anchor Watch, which include reporting the anchors and maintaining mooring buoys. Then we have animal welfare, so we're still there for cats and horses. And then the big work that started in 2007, but slowly and is still very frustrating, is the waste management. I don't mean it's all negative. We're quite forward compared to other places in Indonesia, but it's still very hard to see a proper change because that involves humans. When it's just fish, horse, and cats, it's okay.
You prefer working with fish and cats, yeah?
Yeah, horses mostly. Horses, fish, and corals. I've got cats, but just because I have to adopt them. I love them, but yeah. I would rather have a dog, but then dogs are not allowed here. So yeah.
No dogs at all on the island, wow.
No.
Makes sense.
Muslim islands, so Muslim people don't like dogs, so if they can avoid them,
True.
they don't.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I would have thought it was for protecting turtles or something like that, but it's a cultural thing. Interesting. Let's take a bit of a deeper dive into some of those projects. So we'll start with the reef restoration program and Biorock. Before we get into those technologies, let's start with the basics. What is a coral and why are coral reefs important?
Okay. Coral reefs, coral, there are many types of corals, but the most important are the hard coral because they are reef builders. They're animals, so it's calcium carbonate exoskeleton and with many polyps, and the animals is called the polyps. So one coral colony can include millions of polyps, all with the same genetic information. And basically, the little polyps will just grow its calcium carbonate exoskeleton, and once it's made enough, it's going to split in two. That's how the coral grow. Okay. But then if you have just the animal, the polyp, which is very similar to a jellyfish in terms of, the shape and things like this, or how it looks. It's got tentacles and a mouth that is also where all the debris come out. So a mouth and an asshole in one place. And
I can think of a few people like that.
Yeah, tentacles. So this is basically transparent, microscopic. Most of the polyps are really tiny, and then some can be quite big, but anyway, tiny polyps. And then calcium carbonate is kind of white, so then you'll have like a structure that is all white, and that the coral lives in symbiosis with a microscopic algae, this time very, very tiny, called the zooxanthella. The zooxanthella lives within the tissue of the polyps, and that's what gives the color to the coral. So one species of zooxanthella with one polyp, so one color only to the coral, to one colony. And then the amazing thing is that the same coral species can have different type of zooxanthellae, so have different color. So when people start talking about, this orange tip coral and things like this, they don't know anything about coral because you can't describe a coral by its color, except two, that are the red coral and blue coral, that are very special coral. They're not even the most common coral. So anyway, calcium carbonate exoskeleton, tiny polyps in it that lives with a zooxanthella that gives the color. The zooxanthella is there to feed the coral through the photosynthesis. So all that the algae produce with the photosynthesis is for food for the corals, mostly glucose, but And that's how the coral polyps feed up to 98% of its requirement. So again, some people will say like, oh, I saw all the polyps out, the tentacles out. The corals were feeding. And say, yeah. That's true. But most of their food comes from the photosynthesis of the zooxanthella, the symbiotic algae that lives within the tissue. And the corals are very important for many things. First, the coral reefs are the habitat for more than 33% of the fish from all over the world. And then all the other fish, they will need to pass by the reef at some point of their life. Even the tunas are born in warm waters of a reef, and same as the humpback whales, they give birth in Madagascar on the reef there and raise the baby there for a while. So, and then you've got manta rays coming to get cleaned, and then you've got sharks coming to hunt and to feed on the reef. You get turtles that need to come on the reef and on the beach, at some point to lay their eggs as well. If no reef, no beach, because the reef is the reef barrier that's going to slow down the waves and bring the sand to the beach. If you don't have a reef, then the waves are going to eat the island away, taking the sand away, because they won't be slowed down by the reef. Whales for, income and food for probably 3 to 5 billion people. Very important. So yeah, to keep our island, and then it's a very rich ecosystem. They said the second diversity on Earth.
Yep.
But then an hour, the first is rainforest or the jungle, yeah. But an hour in the forest and an hour snorkeling on the reef. I'd rather do the reef. How many species I'm gonna see and the colors of them? Yeah. Unless you start digging and looking for insects and worms in the rainforest, but yeah.
Which is what I love to do.
Yeah, exactly. Not looking at the big monkeys, but yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. It's really interesting the way you were describing coral there. Actually reminded me exactly of, we've got lots of different lichen here in the Amazon, and it's a symbiosis between a fungus and an algae, and it's almost exactly the same process. The fungus gets its nutrition through the photosynthesis of the algae, I think. Anyway. Most people are probably aware that climate change and ocean acidification are having a negative impact on coral reefs, but what exactly is that impact? What's the process that's unfolding?
Okay. So the coral reefs have been noticed to be the most sensitive ecosystem to climate change, global warming. So global warming then creates climate change. And what climate change does is there's no more season. And what's happening on those years where there's no more season is we have a warm current coming around the wrong season, and during the rainy season when the air is really warm. So it doesn't balance. And so this warm current is called El Nino. So they're going to call El Nino years. And it's going to go all around the world. So last year we knew it was in the Caribbean, and so it came here as well. And then what we observe in the coral reefs is mass coral bleaching. And actually it's not the polyp itself sensitive to the high temperature, but the symbiotic algae, the zooxanthellae. And that 1 degree above the optimal water for corals to grow, which is 28 degrees Celsius, then the corals start to bleach and to lose its algae, because the algae is reacting to the high temperature, and the corals, as the polyp don't like it, so they're gonna expel the algae. So it loses its food, so it's starving, but it's also losing its color. So that's how you see, that's why it's called mass coral bleaching. So, but the coral is not dead yet when it's bleached. There's still hope. If the temperature comes back to normal within, let's say, normal time, depends on the species of coral and the other stresses around. But let's say a month, 2 months, most of the coral will survive. But if longer, then you start seeing the coral dying. So then they get covered with algae and that macroalgae, and they start being hairy rather than, So then the polyp is dead. It's only the exoskeleton there. So that's what's happening. But if the temperature comes back to normal, so 28 or 20 below 29, let's say, then the coral is going to be able to recover, so to catch another algae and to feed, to grow, and to be happy. Ocean acidification is another issue, and that's from the CO2 that we release in the air. And the ocean is the buffer for this excess of CO2, and more CO2 dissolve in the water make the ocean more acidic. And if you use any acid on calcium carbonate, it makes bubble and disintegrate. So it doesn't make that to the coral because it's not that acidic yet. I don't think it will anyway. But what it does, it limits its growth. So for everything with calcium carbonate, from seashell, hard coral, and then the growth is not as fast as before because it's acidic. So all those calcium things, like calcium carbonate, cannot form as fast as before. So yeah. So global warming is mostly because of methane, or all those gases that are very potent in terms of warming the earth, and ocean acidification is CO2. So people often are not really aware of CO2, what it does, and methane, what it does, and where's that methane come from as well. So yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. That was an excellent explanation. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit more about Biorock now. How does that work, and how are you implementing it on the islands?
Okay, so Biorock is a technology that was invented by Wolf Felsberg and Tom Goro in the 70s. And they tested it in Jamaica in the 80s, and they said, whoa, it works for coral. It's basically making building materials underwater. And so we're doing an electrolysis. So we're using electricity. And we build cathodes, basically. So electrolysis is always two electrodes. So one cathode, one anode. So we build cathode out of steel rebar. So that's really easy to find because everyone building, got some steel rebar. And then, so in different shapes, then we weld all of that, and then we're going to sink it, and we're going to deploy two cables, one that goes to the steel structure, that is the cathode, and another one we're going to connect an anode. We use titanium, but we can use other things, but titanium is the best because it lasts for 2 decades or probably more. And that's the anode. And we put those two electrodes not far from another, and then cables out of the sea onto a power supply, which is a AC to DC power supply, and you give a very low voltage there. So by the power supply is around 8 volts, maybe 6 to 9 volts, and then once you reach the stricter is only about 1.5 or 2 volts, so it's safe to touch. You're not going to get electric shock in the water mostly. And what's up? Yeah, because you lose power along the length of the cable when you use direct current. Anyway, what's happening is the electricity is going to go through the water from the anode to the cathode, and the result of the electrolysis, so a series of chemical reaction, is that the steel is not going to rust, but it's going to grow limestone or calcium carbonate. Woohoo! Same as the coral exoskeleton. So then what we do is we pick up some corals from around. First we had to go different dive site, but now the Biorock dive site is just full of corals. So we just picked the loose one, the ones that are not attached and cemented on the Biorock and that are loose on the seabed. We attach them onto the Biorock. We use cable ties, so they nicely attach and not wobbly, and then you look at them growing and being happy. So they're happy, always out, polyps out. And the electrolysis protects them against stress with up to 70% more survival, and it makes them grow 2 to 6 or 8 times faster. So very depends on the species. You know, the corals called submassive that have so much calcium carbonate exoskeleton. They take much longer time to grow than the fast-growing acropora, the branching, or the table. So try to mix about everyone, you know, make a happy family on the Biorock, but then there's always one that is going to win, usually. One. So but then all around the Biorock, you also have a lot of corals growing and gain the benefits of the electrolysis. But it's not finished with this technology. So the technology is amazing because the first investment is what people are like, ooh, that's expensive, cables, titanium, steel, everything, finding the proper environment to sink everything. But then after 6 months, a year for us, a year sometimes more, then your first cathode is just full of corals. You know, there's still many species and happy fish and things like this. And they start being quite well covered with calcium carbonate, maybe half a centi all around the steel. And then what you can do is make a new cathode. So you make another shape, you know, of steel and sink it next to it, and you connect to the old one. So the electrolysis is going to move to the bare steel, but keep the old one into the field, the electrolytic field. So they're still getting all the benefits from the Biorock process. And we studied as well how far from the anode and cathode the corals will benefit, and it's that 10 meters on each side, you know. So yeah, so like this, every year you can expand your reef. So when people ask me, how many Biorocks do you have now? And now I just reached 170. And it's like, yeah, but I don't have 170 pairs of cables.
Yeah.
Not that many. So yeah.
Fascinating. That's, an incredible piece of technology. And it sounds, complicated, but also fairly easy to implement when you compare to some other types of solutions that are out there.
Yeah.
I'm interested, you talked about sort of the two different impacts. So with warming, you had the algae sort of being dispelled and leaving. And then with ocean acidification, it was halting the calcium carbonate production. So it sounds like the Biorock is better at mitigating ocean acidification. Does it also help with warming waters as well, or not so much?
So yeah, for ocean acidification, the fact that we create calcium carbonate on the Biorock, that helps the corals to grow faster. For global warming and mass coral bleaching, we've had few mass coral bleaching in our history of Biorock, and one we could monitor, it was 2016 when it was really bad. And we monitored more than 200 corals on Biorock and in the wild. And Biorock with solar panels, only 12 hours electricity, and Biorocks on 24/7 electricity from the main grid. All the corals bleach everywhere, but on the Biorocks 24/7, connected 24/7, none of them died. So we've got 100+% survival. Right. So so it's still only a few square meters of reef that survive. But now what we've observed, because this year is also a mass coral bleaching year, is the coral that actually recovered and survived the 2016 mass coral bleaching around here. I don't mean on the Biorock. They only a few of them are bleaching. Most of them are not bleaching, although the temperature is warm. And other baby new corals So I think the Zooxanthellae heard our prayers, or the love we sent, and they start having a mutation and start being resistant to the hot water. No, that's what happens with natural selection, adaptation, and things like this.
Yep.
So Darwin.
Increasing resilience. Great.
Yeah.
I'm now interested. How do corals reproduce? How do they breed?
Oh, they have two ways of reproducing. So, sexual and asexual. So the sexual way is spawning, which everyone knows about mass coral spawning in the Great Barrier Reef. That happens October, November, and then the sea is full of eggs and sperm, and then which are part of the plankton, and then all the plankton feeders are coming for the big feast. And then the other way is asexual, so same as how they grow, they're just going to split, or an anchor or a storm or a snorkeler, diver, or whatever would cut just a bit of coral out of the colony, and that can grow again. If it finds a nice place where it can settle and cement, it's going to grow again. So that's also the coral we take to attach on the Biorock, but that's also what we do called reef gardening. So you see, I'm a coral gardener. So I always dive with gloves because I'm bored of getting stung, and I touch everything, but I'm always helping. You can get coral boulders, the ones that are making huge mushroom ones, they're 1,000 years. But when they're still young, they're so exposed to waves and being flipped over. And flipped over means no sun, no photosynthesis, no food, dead. Yeah. So you flip them back and find a place where they can be stable, because no corals have roots. They're not like trees, almost like trees, but they don't have roots. So they attach to the seabed. So if the seabed is just a pile of rubble or sand, then it's really unstable. So that's why we started the Biorock as well, because like in some sites, it's just the slope got destroyed by anchoring, dynamite fishing, or storms, irresponsible behavior of whoever. And then the slope is just so unstable. And if it's a gentle slope, it's got chance to that all that rubble will cement together. But if it's quite steep slope with waves and current, things like this, it's always in movement. And then baby corals start growing, and as soon as it gets resistance against the water, then it got the risk of rolling down the slope. So yeah.
Fascinating. The whole use of technology for conservation in your area is fascinating, and I wish I could pick your brains about it some more, but I want to sort of make use of time. And the other topic I'd like to talk with you about is tourism and waste management on the island. Could you give an overview of the impact of tourism on the Gili Islands, and what sort of waste management systems you have in place at the moment?
The mass tourism on the island, or tourism on the island, makes that everyone comes and bring rubbish, and all the businesses here are going to produce rubbish from serving people, hotels, restaurants, and things like this. So the consequence of that is that we have a huge rubbish dump in the middle of the island. And I tell you, the size is about 1 hectare, and it's about 7-8 meters high now, and just a pile of rubbish. Yeah, but it's mostly by visiting it that people realize, and some people don't. Sometimes we put photos of the rubbish dump or videos of the rubbish dump on our social media, and some people are like, "That's not Gili Tea. I've been there. That doesn't exist." So,
Propaganda.
yeah, well, next time you come, please join one of our recycling tour, because then we will be able to show you the rubbish dump, and you can climb on it. It's populated by cows. Yeah, the cows are there eating the organic. Unfortunately, we went through a series of issues, obstacles with waste management, but also we've learned a lot along the way, because your first thing, we're just going to clean the beach and it's going to be okay. We're going to organize a big island cleanup and it's going to be okay. 2010 said like, oh, we're going to make a big fundraising and order 3,000 bins for the island, so it's going to be okay. And then the dump is still growing. Maybe the front street are nice and cleaner, but the dump is still growing. And then we organize waste segregation and people making compost, and that's and making a waste management. So we do socialization for a week, and then everyone is like, yes, I'm gonna select my organic and then buy the compost that you make and things like this. And then after, let's say, 10 days, instead of 600 businesses and people selecting their organic and us being able to do mass compost, and there's actually only 50 of them that are still selecting their organic, So we've learned that waste management is multiple factors that all need to be in place to be able to run efficient waste management. Because often the government will just send us a machine like, oh, here is a machine, that's the solution. And it's like, no, it's not. In 2017, before the earthquake, we did evaluate how much waste was coming, and it was a high season, so August 2017, and the type of waste coming. So we had up to 20 tons with up to 9 tons of that was organic. And you have to count that it's more than half, not in weight, but in volume, because organic is really heavy and all the rest is not, the residue and things like this. So residue, trash, recyclable are not that heavy. So we had different association, communication forum, working with the head of the island, working with the local government and things like this. National government built huge sorting facilities. They started in April 2018 after 2 years of communication forum, making a waste management system, all the plans and everything that need to come together. They made they couldn't finish it because April 2018, okay, they started it. August 2018, earthquake, everyone went, nobody here to build or finish the building. And then a year plus after, a new contractor to come to finish the building. And then the building finished in December 2019. And then January 2020, we go to the national government and say like, thank you very much. It's a beautiful place, but... So we made a list of frustration of things that were not there. And then we made a plan, and we showed, I did the presentation there. Basically, like, it's a place to work with rubbish. There's no water, no toilet. And that's the first thing. There's like, then we ask for containers on wheels, empty, they're 80 kilos, so you can't go anywhere with them, right? So, and then you've got the conveyors on one side of the building. The building is like 80 meters long, and then the press machine on the other side. And it's like, why? Oh, because we gave you the forklift. Yeah, but that's one more step, when you can just off the conveyor into the press machine. They didn't really like me opening my mouth like this. Mostly the North Lombok government, the local government, were there at the meeting as well, So they're like, because they were supposed to check on the building, not us. And then, many things like this. Oh, then the glass crushing machine are there. So next to the conveyor instead of the press machine, basically. And then it's so glass crushing machine produce a very bad dust that if you breathe it, you're going to die pretty quickly. And it's like, oh, let's put them next to the conveyors where about 30 people are going to work constantly, So, so basically all the things like this. So the national government said, okay, but we don't have any more money to put in there because they already put $2 million in that building, so they don't want to put more. And okay, so Gili Eco Trust works with FMPL. FMPL is the local community group, NGO, collecting waste for since 1999. And we've started to help them in 2007 through the horse clinic. So rubbish bunnies. Anyway, so we said, that's okay. FMPL and Gili Eco Trust, we're going to, save a bit every month and do a few modifications every month until we can run it. And then the national government said yeah, whatever. And then we came back to Lombok and then we got called for a local government meeting. And they're like, no, don't do anything. We have to run it as it is and show them that they need to put more money. And they said they don't have more money to put in there. Anyway, that was February 2020, obviously March, COVID, stuck for 2 years, couldn't do any modification, couldn't do whatever in the building. We were only allowed to move our glass crushing machine and upcycling project there that we use and in one corner there. But the COVID, we changed our strategy. We don't have any more the donation from the divers because no tourists, and FMPL doesn't get much businesses or people paying for rubbish collection because there's no people. The hotels close and there's not much rubbish. So it was 2 years of struggling and instead of applying to $5,000 a year that I usually do, we did $100,000 a year. And then loads of online meeting, which is the great thing with COVID, is that now you don't need to move, for meetings or podcast. And then we made a partnership with the sea cleaners. We got loads of donation from, for all kind of project. But it's hard to get donation for waste management because that's ongoing problem, issues, and on a touristic island, people don't understand. Why don't you get the businesses to pay? Yeah, because they already think they pay too much and that we're not doing our job properly, but they don't realize the issue. Anyway, we made a partnership with the sea cleaners. They are those boats, the Mobula, the Manta, collecting waste from the ocean. Then they need place like the sorting center here to deal with the waste that they collect from the ocean to avoid it going back there. And their partnership includes a budget for the modification of the TPS, it's called sorting center, and to make it efficient, because they agree on our plans, our vision of where the machine should be, where the rubbish should come in, and things like this. So there's the budget for that, and then we went to see the local government. Hey, look, we don't need to wait for any money from the government, so can we start modifying the place? No. Okay. Why? no reason, obviously. Anyway, it took a long time for us to get the authorization, which is not a proper authorization, just a recommendation letter from the Dinas Lingkungan Hidup, so the environmental guy in North Lombok. October 2023 only, we could start modifying the place. So we're still in it, basically, because everything takes us slow. And then now we just came out of the months of Ramadan when everything is even slower. But no, the island, yeah, no motorbikes, no car. Everything is with manpower and horsepower, yeah, to bring all the materials there and to make everything. So now we've moved the conveyor in the right place. We've moved the press machine next to the conveyors. We've made walls and to block everything where the glass upcycling project is. And we've opened some of the panels for different entry and exit of the waste. And move all the cables as well for this. And the plan is to, once it's ready and we've got all the employees to run it, we're going to invite everyone on the island, but not just like the boss, the manager, the owners, but like everyone, you know. And the sorting center is just next to the dump. And we're going to do a 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks event as long as everyone comes. And they come here and they look at the dump, you know, because not many people know that it exists. And then we show them the plans we have with their waste. And then they're going to sign a contract that said they're going to pay that much money per month for daily waste collection, and that all the waste is only going to be picked up if it's organic on one side and non-organic on the other side. If it's not selected, we don't pick up. And then we put, because we don't have an educational patrol that we dreamt of before, not enough money, the Eco Ranger, we're going to get everyone into a WhatsApp group, because now it's what works, you know. We've got one for the water, for the electricity. So now they're going to get one for waste, which allow us to share videos, animation, posters, education, you know, where is your tea bag going? Organic, actually. And where's my tissue going? Organic again. And then where's my paper going? No, the other way, you know. So the most common mistakes, the different recommendation, but we can also reward the people doing really great. Oh, here's a t-shirt. They love t-shirts. Or 10 kilos of rice. You know, someone will be happy. And we can also shame. Ooh, those ones are really bad. A photo of their rubbish, you know. And then everyone is there, you know, part of the group. And you should see on the electricity group every time there's a power cut. The guys working for the electricity company, they get so much. So yeah, mostly like last month we had 14 hours and you can't imagine. And then everyone lost signal because then the 4G antennas was not working anymore. Anyway, but still people were still posting. The next morning when the electricity came back, all the messages came as well. But yeah, so I think that's our plan. We've learned from our mistake. Bins in the front are not enough. Socialization event in one time only is not enough. So we needed to find a way of repetition, sanctioning people with a bigger fee, because their waste is not selected is an administration nightmare for us and really hard to deal with the waste that is not sorted in the back. So delaying everything and then probably have more staff to work there and things like this. So that's our plan. That's our dream plan. And that's why I explain when I take people on the recycling tour after they climb the dump, and then it's like, we have hope. It will go much faster if I get 1 or 2 million euros today, you know, and then tack, done.
Yeah.
But
I don't have
but
1
no.
or 2 million euros for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, maybe someone listening,
Maybe.
please. I spend my own money playing the French Lotto, and that makes me dream.
Yep.
And maybe it's gonna come,
Yep.
My brother tells me no chance, but anyway.
Well, I'm amazed by your determination and resilience through all of that. So if anyone deserves to win the lottery, it's you.
Thank you. I hope. Fingers crossed.
I'd like to shift focus to you as an individual now, Delphine, if that's all right. Your name literally means dolphin, so tell me, did you grow up spending a lot of time in the ocean?
No.
No?
No, I didn't.
Or water? Were you a
Yeah, well,
water-based
no, I
kid?
grew up in the suburb of Paris. And my dad was a pilot, and he died when I was 5.5. So, and my mom decided to stay in the suburb of Paris, although that was for him first, so it's easier for her to find job and things like this. My first passion was pony riding, so horse riding. But because I've got scoliosis in my back, the doctor said, oh, she needs to do ballet dancing or swimming. I did a year of ballet dancing until my mom found out that I was in the bush and not going to ballet dancing class. So then I went swimming. So yeah, to keep my back straight and to be able to ride the ponies. So swimming, the water always been there, swimming. And then my granddad, so my dad's dad, lived in south of France. So we'll go see my grandparents and my 2 aunts and all the cousins there many times a year for the holidays. And they all have swimming pools. So we're always in the pool. So always playing there. Then I think first looking at coral reefs, it was maybe I was 8. I was 8. Because my dad was a pilot in Air France, we had the cheap flight ticket for a long time. So my mom would take us for some family holidays once a year. And she had some friends in Reunion Island. So she rented a little house there and we were going on the beach. She hates water. But my brother and me, we were going snorkeling every day. She likes the sun, she likes to be tan and lay on the beach and read some books and things like this. But yeah, so with my brother, we were snorkeling all day long, and my mom bought us some nice books, fish books and things like this, and we started looking at all the different species of fish, or moray eel. We didn't really like the moray eel, but yeah, everything we could see. So that was the first thing. And then I was like, I would love to go diving, but I didn't have the edge. And as soon as I could, 12 years old, again, traveling, but this time Air France kids camp, teenager camp, where we were going. Again, in Reunion Island, I could dive and then do another dive. And then I was hooked. But yeah, in suburb of Paris, you couldn't really dive. So it was always and then it's expensive when you go on holidays when you're young and students. So I did my study in France with I did six months in Canada and then things like this, just kept traveling a bit, but otherwise always horse riding. So I worked as a horse riding instructor during all my studies. And then when I finished my studies, so I'm an engineer in agronomy, which is agriculture and food and things like this. I decided to go traveling because as a student, you still have those cheap flight tickets from my dad. But if you're not a student, after 26, then it's finished, 26 years old, then it's finished. So that's what I did. I went traveling for almost 2 years. And then someone who I met in Burma I was doing a dive master in Gili Trawangan at the end of my trip, and she's like, "Ooh, you should come here. You're gonna love the island for the horses and the diving." And I was, that sounds great. That sounds like a great excuse for the family. Sorry, I'm not coming back yet. I'm gonna do my dive master and instructor course first. So I'm gonna add some plus 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 on my CV. Then I'll come back. I never did. So yeah.
When did it start to feel like home, Gili?
It's I think it first when I was here I was like, oh, then I'll go and then I'll start doing the yoga teacher training in India and things like this. I still wanted to, travel and work, or gain more. I think the first Biorock we sunk in November 2004, I felt a bit like, oh, maybe I should stay. But then 2005 we did more, and then I think 2006 when Wolf and Tom told me like, oh, we should organize a Biorock workshop with you on Gili Trawangan, and then Tom was often telling me like, you need to train some locals because you're gonna go, and I was like, no, I'm gonna stay look after the babies. So yeah. I think then he didn't believe me, but yeah, and I'm still here now. He's okay. It's like, okay, yeah, 20 years after, that's okay. She's still there maintaining the reefs. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you started out just sort of really interested in being in nature, and you're talking about horses and being in the water and that kind of thing. You described yourself as an eco-warrior at the start. Was that a transition? Did you get into conservation a bit later, or would you have described yourself as an eco-warrior at 18?
Oh, no, I was not an eco-warrior when I was really young. And I was interested in nature, and I love nature and animals. But when I started to dive and earn salary from the reefs, basically, I don't know. I just started to feel like I need to learn more, to know more, and then do my bit, And on a small island, any project that you do, you very quickly see the positive or negative consequences. So yeah, and I think that's how it started. I always loved nature and animals, and my family was quite good with like, alternative medicines, and my granddad always had a vegetable garden. We will go in. My two granddads actually. My mom and my grandmothers were always cooking with the season. We learn really quickly, just buy what's available around your place according to the season. There's no point buying a mango in a supermarket, when you live in Paris. And then, so I think that was like the base. And then once I was on my own, I think it's always the willingness to learn more, so learn more about corals. And then that's why I said to everyone who becomes eco-warrior with us, that learn as much as you can, because you're going to retain maybe only 10-20% of what you learn, but then what you've learned, make it as like now you're the spokesperson and you're going to be the one educating others. Because if we want to save the planet, that's the only way it can go. We can't hope from the politician to make a good decision or the lobbying company. It's not going to happen. It will come from individual. The change in the world will come from the people, and not from the elite. They know already.
I wholeheartedly agree. I'm interested. Is there any advice you would give to a young person who's interested in doing the kind of work that you're doing, working with coral reefs and that kind of thing?
Any advice? That's same as I just said. Just learn as much as you can. and start doing. Learn as much as you can, and then find a place where you can start. It's not always easy to start. Or maybe join a group that is already doing something to learn more and to also learn how things could be done better. Because we learn, everyone learns from their mistake. If you don't make mistake, then it doesn't mean your project is perfect. It actually means the opposite. So learn, travel, and meet people, and then join groups. And I don't take everyone who says something, like even me, don't take whatever as it's got borders and that's finished, is nothing else, because there's so much more to discover. And for waste management, that's another issue, but I think we can still learn from plastic. We can learn marine biology, and coral reef is still very young, so the knowledge about it, so there's loads to do. Like Sylvia Earle says, it's like grow your blue heart. So wherever your blue heart is, if it's in your brain, your actual heart, your guts, that's what you need to grow. Yeah.
I love that. I want to ask you about your toughest, most challenging day or experience working for Gili Eco Trust. And I also want to ask you about your best, most rewarding day or experience. And I'll let you decide which one you'd like to talk about first.
I'm going to cry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I get emotional quickly, even when I look at videos that were made, But the most difficult day was probably in February 2017. The police came to the island to arrest everyone working in the one gate system, which was the head of the village, and a system we put in place together. So everyone on the island was paying towards waste management and waste collection and education and island security. But because we never paid the government put a complaint, and after 3 years of running that system on the island, the police came. And I think there was the worst day for me, because I think burn out in 2 minutes, or like being so scared. And, it was like, I don't know, really, really hard. Everyone arrested, all the waste collector being worried of being arrested as well. And that was the start of a couple of months of struggle with restarting a waste collection company, with the fear that the government is going to do the same to us, and the police is going to, and having to go to court as a witness of the whole thing, and the head of the village with who I was working, ending up in jail. So that was probably the hardest day. And then in those hard days or anything like this, you just forget what makes you happy and things like this. And what makes me happy is when I go in the water. So that's in many days. I would one of my latest best day is last year November. Again, during COVID, we made a partnership with Aquagen Dino Rotor, which are engineer Canada, UK, who are making those renewable energy from the ocean. So they made a turbine to power the Biorock. So I'm going to cry on the happy one, actually. So sinking the Biorock and connecting it, and then looking at the turbine spinning. Yeah, that was it. That was the best.
That's incredible. That would have been, yeah, seeing the project running almost entirely by itself, you know? It's using the power of the ocean to grow coral, and wow, that really special.
Yeah, exactly. That was my goal for so long, looking at using electricity for the Biorock from the main grid is a bit irritating, because petrol in Indonesia, well, electricity comes from petrol in Indonesia. So always my goal is like, find a turbine that can work and power the reef restoration. So we call it the blue renewable energy. And that works. So we're restoring a very rubbly slope with the ocean currents. And now the company, I had a meeting with them last week, and they've made a wave donut. So they want to expand that blue energy reef with more renewable energy from the ocean. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love seeing innovative, creative technology being applied to this kind of conservation. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. So yeah, we're going to keep on going with that way, Yeah.
Fantastic. Keep it up. We're almost done, but I have a couple of quick fire questions that I like to ask everyone. You keen for that?
Okay.
So you're allowed to pick one person, living or dead, and you get to live their entire life from start to finish. So you pause your life right now, you live their whole life, experiencing everything they've experienced, and then you come back to your life with all their memories. Who do you choose?
Oh, that's hard. Well, then I will say Cousteau, because he was part of my childhood and the love of discovering the oceans of the coral reef. But then everything he did was not really eco. So I can come back and be more eco. Yeah.
Fantastic. You wake up tomorrow, you find you've been elected president of the world. You've got full power, everyone's supportive of what you're doing. You don't need to compromise to win votes or anything like that. What's the first thing you do in order to protect the world's coral reefs?
Oh, in order to protect the world's coral reef, but also the ocean plastic or things like this, I would increase the tax on all the companies that are doing shit to the environment and lower the tax to the good initiatives and the good companies, but with proper audit, not corrupted audit. I think that's how it should become.
So tax reform for you is the main. That would be your first step.
Yeah, yeah, and then as president of the world, I think management and like government management should be done by the people. So it will be nominating like a group of people to deal with the management, probably reduce the number of governmental company as well, because well corrupted. So everyone becomes a bit more free and free to speak, freedom. And then to try to save the world is really tax the bad one or close them down, and lower the tax on the good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple more questions. Firstly, what are some other organizations that inspire you and whose work you admire?
Well, many actually, but I will say it's mostly like small initiatives, so that inspire me. And like because that's where you can really see action. So we've got groups in Lombok or groups in Bali or in other places in in Indonesia, and I'm really impressed by how much they're doing, without having that much education as I had, or access to funds. But they're not giving up, and that's amazing, because I don't mean all of them, but the biggest the NGO is, the more people are just sitting behind their desk, and rather than being in the field. That, for me, I'd rather be out in the field um, than behind my laptop. So yeah, and to feel really active for the world. So yeah, I would say only like very small group. We've got eco market group in Lombok, and all those ladies making things. There's some making textile from pineapples. Some are making coconut balls. Some are making honeys and things like this, and some are making loads of things with rubbish, and teaching the kids how they can make eco bricks out of rubbish and things like this. I think that's where it starts, Yeah.
I believe you offer the opportunity for people to volunteer at Gili Eco Trust. What are the requirements for someone interested, and what sorts of activities would they be doing?
So it's not really volunteering, but it kind of. We offer a 1 month training first, and you need to be motivated and happy to work in the field, underwater, or on the dump. And the 1 month training is 2 week coral conservation course with me, and then a week of land project and monitoring project, and then a week of coral propagation with my colleague, and then that's 4 week training. And then, so before you come, or when you arrive on the island, you have to do your diving courses, so you know how to dive before starting the course with me. And many people are like this. You'd say, I have many dive master instructor coming for my course. I have many people with already many dives coming for my course that just want to do more, and it usually changes the way they're going to dive, because they learn how to do reef gardening. But otherwise, I've got many young people who are coming here for internship, volunteering, gap year, or anything like this, and they come a week before the training, and they do open water and advanced course, and then they're ready to go, and then it changes their life usually.
Fantastic. And a final question for you, Delphine. If people were to donate money to Gili Eco Trust, what sorts of things would that money go towards?
Oh, so we are on global giving, where people can choose which project. There's horses, cats, waste, and turtles. We're going to put the reefs there soon. Otherwise, they can contact me by email, and if they want to, because we get individual donation as well. We got like some people who now became friends, who are giving every year a big amount of money. So she can choose, or they can choose, where the money goes towards. If it's for waste, if it's for coral reef, if it's for everything. Cooperate, we call it, the way we can all work together. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, the idea with this podcast is that every month I want to feature a different not-for-profit organisation, and then I also run a Patreon where people can support the project. So half the money that comes in helps me to keep sharing more stories, and then the other half goes directly to the organisations that are featured. So I'll be sending that donation over to Gili Eco Trust very shortly.
Thank you.
A big thank you to all the amazing people who support the project, and an even bigger thank you to you, Delphine, for taking the time to chat with me about all of the incredible work you're doing. I live in the Amazon and I love the jungle, but you've definitely made me want to come and visit the island. So thank you so much.
Nice. Visit the reefs. Thank you very much for inviting me, and all the interesting questions. And I hope many people will enjoy listening to me and my French accent. Yeah.
I'm sure they will. Thank you so much, Delphine.
Thank you.
That was Delphine Robbe. Managing Director of the Gili Eco Trust. As always, I'd like to highlight 3 key points that Delphine made, and the first is this one.
I tell you, the size is about 1 hectare, and it's about 7-8 meters high now, and just a pile of rubbish. And it's mostly by visiting it that people realize, and some people don't. Sometimes we put photos of the rubbish dump or videos of the rubbish dump on our social media, and some people are like, "That's not Gili tea. I've been there. That doesn't exist." So, yeah. Well, next time you come, please join one of our recycling tour, because then we will be able to show you the rubbish dump, and you can climb on it.
Imagine travelling to a tiny corner of Indonesia to visit an island that only takes 20 minutes to walk across, and not noticing the gigantic pile of rubbish in the middle of it. This image got me thinking about what ethical travel looks like in an increasingly unsustainable world. Of the 2,000 tourists who visit Gili Trawangan on an average day, I would imagine the majority stay for a few days at most, eager to pack their brief holiday full of as many experiences as possible, before beginning the long and presumably carbon-intensive journey back to their regular lives. But such a short visit leaves little time to really connect with a place. And before you embark on such a journey, it's worth reflecting on what the purpose of travelling is for you. If your goal is simply to relax, consider whether there's somewhere closer to home that would allow you to achieve that. If your goal is to collect new experiences, consider what kinds of experiences you truly value, and whether you'd be better off staying longer in a single place rather than rushing from one destination to another. But of course, placing responsibility on the individual obscures the larger picture, where inequalities between and within societies define who is even able to travel slowly in the first place. Many European countries with strong labour laws guarantee up to a month of annual leave for workers every year, allowing people the freedom to be able to travel more slowly and sustainably. On the other hand, employers in the United States aren't even legally obliged to provide workers with annual leave, and in the rest of the industrialised world, the amount of leave can be inadequate, and many workers don't qualify for it at all. Anyway, this is a complicated topic, but the moral of the story is that reducing inequality and improving workers' rights is also beneficial to the planet. The next point I'd like to highlight is this.
Coral reefs, coral, they're animals. So it's calcium carbonate exoskeleton, and with many polyps, and the animals is called the polyps. So one coral colony can include millions of polyps, all with the same genetic information. And basically the little polyps will just grow its calcium carbonate exoskeleton, and once it's made enough, it's going to split in two. That's how the coral grow. And then calcium carbonate is kind of white, so then you'll have like a structure that is all white, and that the coral lives in symbiosis with a microscopic algae, this time very, very tiny, called the zooxanthella. The zooxanthella lives within the tissue of the polyps, and that's what gives the color to the coral. So the zooxanthella is there to feed the coral through the photosynthesis. So all that the algae produce with the photosynthesis is food for the corals.
Okay, seriously, how cool are corals? I won't lie, when Delphine said they were animals, I nodded along confidently, being like, yeah, of course, corals are animals. I honestly had no idea what corals were, and animal would not have been my first guess. Then there's their symbiosis with algae and the fact they can reproduce both sexually and asexually, and that's before we even get into the insane amount of other marine animals that rely on corals to exist. They are absolutely amazing organisms, and they deserve way more attention, which leads into the next key point.
So for ocean acidification, the fact that we create calcium carbonate on the Biorock, that helps the corals to grow faster. For global warming and mass coral bleaching, We've had few mass coral bleaching in our history of Biorock, and one we could monitor, it was 2016 when it was really bad. And we monitored more than 200 corals on Biorock and in the wild. And Biorock with solar panels, only 12 hours electricity, and Biorock's on 24/7 electricity from the main grid. All the corals bleach everywhere, but on the Biorocks 24/7, connected 24/7, none of them died. So we've got 100+% survival. So it's still only a few square meters of reef that, survive. But now what we've observed, because this year is also a mass coral bleaching year, is the coral that actually recovered and survived the 2016 mass coral bleaching around here. I don't mean on the Biorock. Only a few of them are bleaching. Most of them are not bleaching, although the temperature is warm. So I think the Zooxanthellae heard our prayers, or the love we sent, and they start having a mutation and start being resistant to the hot water. No, that's what happens with natural selection, adaptation, and things like this. So yeah, Darwin.
We've spoken before on this podcast about how many people working in conservation are simply emergency responders, doing whatever they can to preserve life within critical ecosystems. And people working on coral reefs like Delphine are no different. It's been predicted that up to 99% of coral reefs may die off if we reach 2 degrees of warming, and we're currently on track for a world well above that. The reality is that without major systemic changes to our global economy and a significant decrease in consumption in wealthy nations, our children and grandchildren may well live in a world without natural coral reefs. And while we must bring about those systemic changes, Delphine's work also highlights a more pragmatic kind of hope that can be found through the combination of innovative technologies, dedicated conservationists, and the wonders of evolution. Given enough time, energy, and resources, nature can adapt to a changing world, and the battle for a healthy and sustainable planet is one that must be fought on every possible front. If you'd like to support the Gili Eco Trust, you can donate to them directly by visiting giliecotrust.com, and you can follow their work on Facebook and Instagram. On behalf of all the amazing people who support this project, I was able to make a donation of $140 to the Gili Eco Trust. If you'd like to help me give more money to more amazing NGOs in the future, please consider signing up to the Patreon via the link in the show notes for as little as $5 a month. In the show notes, you'll also find further information about a range of topics that Delphine and I discussed during this conversation. Another big thank you to everyone who supports this podcast, and to Delphine Robbe for being keen to chat with me about the incredible work of her and her team. I hope you found the Gili Eco Trust as inspiring as I did, and I'll see you next month for another episode of Protect the World.